Good morning, everyone, and happy Halloween. Well, just a quick note, I will not be having a live show tomorrow, but we do have some content. I'm going to be releasing the on-the-ground reporting I did from Georgia tomorrow. That's going to be the same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you want to watch that and see what we found talking to voters in the swing state of Georgia, that's going to be on epochtv.com. So again, no live show, but we have the special feature we just put together, again, from the reporting I did in Georgia. Now, look, on to today's stories, folks. The election is happening in under 1 week, very soon, actually just a few days away. And the Supreme Court now had a say. This is big. The Supreme Court voted 6-3 yesterday, and they're going to allow now Virginia officials to remove suspected non-citizens from the voter rolls. And depending which side of the political spectrum you're listening to, this is either like the purge of voters from the voter rolls, or it's the removal of people who were not legally allowed to vote in the first place from the voter rolls. Now, look, in recent weeks, state officials reportedly removed the names of 1,600 individuals believed to not be U.S. citizens from Virginia voter rolls. Now, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think this is like a purge of voters, or do you think this is about removing people who shouldn't be voting in the first place, right? Tell me about it. But look, also, the elections are dominating the news right now in the White House and the Kamala Harris campaign. They're trying to walk back some statements recently made by President Joe Biden, where Biden referred to Donald Trump supporters, it seemed, as garbage. And this is in context of comments made by a comedian at a Trump event about Puerto Rico being a, quote, floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean, which it was a comedian who said that, not Trump. And now Trump has taken it a step further and appeared to drive a garbage truck to one of his recent events. I'll be going into this as well. Now look, in other news, pro-Palestine messages found to be tied to the ballot box fires in the Pacific Northwest were found, suggesting that maybe they're not about, people questioning the outcome of the elections, and maybe it's a Gaza protest thing. Now I'll be going to these stories and more, so stay tuned, and let's go to the first story. Now, first of all, states got the green light to purge their voter rolls of ineligible voters. The U.S. Supreme Court just ruled that Virginia can resume its removal of people on the voter rolls who are not legally, right? They can't legally vote. And many states, including Virginia, Texas, and a whole lot of others, about 25 signing on to this, they're attempting to check the citizenship of certain registered voters and others in an attempt to eliminate illegal voting. The issue that they've run into is this. Well, how do you register to vote now because of some of the legal changes in recent years? Well, you go and get a driver's license, and the driver's license process through the Department of Motor Vehicles, the federal government, asks you, do you want to register to vote? And are you a citizen? Now, the issue is, if you're not a U.S. citizen and you want to register to vote, you just got to push a button. You still register to vote, you still get your driver's license, simple as that. But for states, they have a legal duty under federal law, again, to make sure that people are registered to vote, are legally allowed to vote, meaning there's a discrepancy in law. Now, look, the Justice Department has pushed back on some of the efforts where states are trying to check their voter rolls and make sure, based on federal law, that they're not violating that by allowing non-citizens to vote. The Justice Department is suing many states for trying to remove these voters. And they're arguing it violates federal law to change voter rolls within 90 days of an election, which is also true. Again, you have kind of a discrepancy in the law. There's two laws conflicting with each other. The recent ruling from the Supreme Court could actually have a pretty broad effect on this effort. Here's AP on it. Let me show you. Now, they say this, the Supreme Court's conservative majority on Wednesday allowed Virginia to resume its purge of voter registrations that the state says is aimed at stopping people who are not U.S. citizens from voting. They say the High Court, over the dissents of the three liberal justices, granted an emergency appeal from Virginia's Republican administration led by Governor Glenn Youngkin. It says the court provided no rationale, this is AP, for its action, which is typical in emergency appeals. It says the justices acted on Virginia's appeal after a federal judge found that the state, they say, illegally purged more than 1,600 voter registrations in the past 2 months. Illegally here, it seems based on AP's reporting, The Supreme Court just ruled that it's acceptable, so it's not illegal, so I don't know why they're saying that. But regardless, they say a federal appeals court had previously allowed the judge's order to remain in effect. And they say the specter of immigrants voting, I think they mean illegal immigrants, has been a main part of the political messaging this year from former President Donald Trump and other Republicans, even though they say such voting is rare in American elections. There's actually conflicting reporting on a lot of this. AP is saying that it's rare. Some private investigations, which appear to be pretty solid, suggest it's not rare at all, and they suggest that illegal votes could be upwards of 2 million votes. Again, with this, it just depends on which side of the news cycle you want to believe. But I would say that, if you understand that maybe both sides exaggerate a little bit, it's still probably a lot. Remember, Georgia was won by 11,000 votes. And so even if it's not 2 million and it's like, 20,000, that's still enough to flip the vote in some states. And so again, that's why it's a big issue. Now here's more on this from the office of Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. He said this. They say Governor Glenn Youngkin released the following statement after the Supreme Court issued its ruling to allow Virginia to keep non-citizens off its voter rolls. And they say, quote, "We are pleased by the Supreme Court's order today. This is a victory for common sense and election fairness." He says, "I am grateful for the work of Attorney General Jason Miyares on this critical fight to protect the fundamental rights of U.S. citizens." And he says, "Clean voter rolls are one important part of a comprehensive approach we are taking to ensure the fairness of our elections." And adds that Virginians also know that we have paper ballots, counting machines not connected to the internet, a strong chain of custody process, signature verification, monitored and secured drop boxes, and a triple check vote counting process to tabulate results. They say Virginians can cast their ballots on Election Day, knowing that Virginia's elections are fair, secure, and free from politically motivated interference. Interesting statement, right? Again, going into 2024, one of the big concerns many people have is, are the elections being done fairly? And a lot of states are taking a lot of action to make sure they tell people, yes, it's being done fairly, don't worry about it, and they're going over the process to try to reassure voters. Speaking of which, I voted yesterday. Here you go. Again in New Jersey. Actually, I did notice that the machines this year were different. Actually, in New Jersey, I don't know if it's like this in everywhere, but the machine basically, they give you a paper ballot, you put it in the machine, you push the buttons of who you want to vote for, it prints it on the ballot physically, it displays it to you, and you can then choose to accept it or reject it. So you accept it, it puts it back in the machine, counts your votes. A lot of states, it seems, are taking different efforts to try to reassure voters at this point. Back to the Supreme Court decision, though, right? This is happening less than a week before the November 5th election. It won't just impact efforts in Virginia. This could also impact efforts in other states and potentially impact efforts after the elections if there are allegations around illegal votes or issues with voter rolls. As I mentioned before, one of the biggest issues you have is that different states filing lawsuits challenging, again, efforts to block them from removing what they believe might be illegal voters from the voting rolls. That effort, right, is being challenged legally. Many of those legal cases will probably not be resolved prior to the elections. Even the one relating to Virginia by the Supreme Court was made as an emergency ruling, meaning it's probably not the end of it. We're probably going to hear a lot more with it. And again, the legal challenges probably after the elections, what is that going to do? It's going to open up the books. It's going to make sure that if a state believes that people illegally voted and the federal government sued the state to prevent, again, a review to make sure that did not happen, it means the lawsuit in place after the elections, when that 90-day requirement is no longer there that the Justice Department is arguing based on, after the elections, they can then actually, based on the ongoing legal case, probably get the information they need to review the votes, which is significant because it means that before or after the election, those things are probably going to be opened. Now, remember, in Texas, the Attorney General is also now suing the Department of Homeland Security for not helping the state verify the citizenship on 450,000 registered voters. And they've deemed these 450,000 registered voters as potentially ineligible. They're not saying they are, they're saying maybe. They're trying to check it with the government systems, which can see whether or not these are legal or not, because the registrations at the Texas level, they were not properly verified. Again, it bypassed the local systems of verifying, so they're asking the federal government to use their systems to verify. The federal government's refusing to do that currently and suing them for trying to do it. Now, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton Texas is suing because they're blocking it. But in some states, the federal government is suing the states. But Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he's now announcing that 25 states are joining together around this. Let me show you. This is half the country, folks. This is Texas Attorney General, an official statement. Virginia may remove non-citizens from its voter rolls after the U.S. Supreme Court granted a stay of a lower court's injunction. They say Attorney General Ken Paxton joined attorney generals from 25 states to file an amicus brief supporting Virginia's authority to remove the non-citizens and secure its elections. And they say is that on October 11th, the U.S. Department of Justice sued to stop Virginia from removing self-identified non-citizens from the state's voter rolls. And look, this is the big thing here. AP is saying these are migrant voters. They are suspected of this. Here they're saying these are self-identified non-citizens, meaning that the individuals identify themselves as not being U.S. citizens, but they were still in our voting rolls. That's the conflict you're seeing with the narratives. But they say this: non-citizens are ineligible to vote in American elections, and it is a federal crime for them to register to vote or attempt to cast a ballot. A federal judge preliminarily enjoined Virginia from removing these illegally registered non-citizens on October 25th. The multi-state brief argued that the preliminary injunction undermines states' constitutionally granted authority to determine voter qualifications and ensure election integrity by ensuring that only eligible U.S. citizens vote. The lawfare launched by the federal government interferes with states' sovereign obligations to determine voter eligibility and to administer elections. Attorney General Paxton and the co-signing attorneys general urged the Supreme Court to overturn the injunction and permit Virginia to steward voter rolls appropriately to prevent non-citizens from influencing American elections. And they say that now the Supreme Court has granted Virginia's application for a stay, blocking the lower court's injunction and enabling Virginia to remove these self-identified non-citizens. Now, look, of course, again, this is all very close to the elections. I mentioned before that a lot of the legal challenges, they're probably going to be ongoing after Election Day. And it's very likely the ongoing cases can and very likely will be used to set the stage for searches for illegal votes. Remember what happened last time in 2020. A lot of the election challenges took place after Election Day. And when you have a team of lawyers looking for evidence and they're getting fed false leads everywhere and they're trying to follow thousands upon thousands and upon thousands of leads, they're going to get some that are accurate and some that are not. And the process of trying to put that together after an election, you saw what happened last time. It didn't really work. What they're doing this time is immediately, before the elections, filing the lawsuits, challenging them, and setting the stage so a legal process is already working that will legally allow the review of those votes post-election if they believe there are issues. Now look, back to these ballots, this is especially because of concerns that illegal immigrants might try to vote in the 2024 elections, one of the big concerns among conservatives. Now, the Supreme Court action just recently, less than a week out from the election, is significant because it suggests the way that the Supreme Court might rule on other issues like this. It suggests also the legalities of the future legal review of voter rolls that we're almost definitely going to be seeing. And if the Supreme Court says, yes, federal law requires states to make sure non-citizens are not voting, yes, the federal government put in place systems that allow people to register to vote and get driver's licenses while bypassing the state ID laws, right, where you again register and there's a verification process where they can prove it. Therefore, they might say that's legal, but therefore the federal government needs to demonstrate using its books, which there's a department of our government for that has the records to verify those voters, And that department is refusing to open that up to states. They're refusing to allow the states to see whether these people are legally registered or not, which makes it so that states are an automatic, again, according to Ken Paxton, are an automatic violation of federal law because they're not doing what they're federally required to do, which is make sure that non-citizens are not voting. Again, it's a discrepancy in law. The legal challenge is based only on the fact they're trying to do this too close to the elections. But again, post-election, and with these lawsuits post-election, it's very unlikely that that legal challenge is going to work. Post-election, they're going to have to open it up, and post-election, they'll be able to cross-reference and make sure that no illegal immigrants voted. That's why this is significant. Now, like in other news, the White House and the Kamala Harris campaign, they appear to be trying to walk back statements made by President Joe Biden, where he appeared to refer to Donald Trump supporters as garbage. I'll be talking more about this after I come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The White House and the Kamala Harris campaign appear to be trying to walk back statements from President Joe Biden where it appeared he referred to Trump supporters as garbage. Now look, let me first show you the comments made by Biden. Watch this.
And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
Now, what Biden is referring to, these are comments made by comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who spoke at Trump's rally last weekend in Madison Square Garden in New York, close to our office, by the way. This was not comments made by Trump himself. Donald Trump did not say that. It was a comedian. Let me show you what Tony Hinchcliffe said. Watch this.
And, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay, all right. Okay, we're getting there. Now, again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody. This isn't exactly a perfect comedy setup.
Now, that comment was picked up by various news outlets, as you would imagine. And eventually, a lot of these news outlets framed it in a way that it appeared that Donald Trump said it. They questioned Donald Trump about it. They asked him about it. Donald Trump says, "I love Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico loves me. I've done more for Puerto Rico than anyone," as Trump often says things like that. And, pretty much wrote it off like that. Trump did not seem to, really kind of go with what the comedian said. Again, it's a comedian, not Trump, who said it. Now, Biden brought this up in a public statement, the one we just showed you. That went viral. And even though Biden noted that it was a speaker to Trump event and not Trump who said it, again, it appeared that he was saying Trump said it, and the whole thing kind of went from there. Now, Kamala Harris is trying to do damage control based on Biden's statement because the Trump campaign latched onto it, and they're like, "Oh, you say we're garbage? You say we're fascists? You say we're deplorables? What's with this name calling a divisiveness?" And again, if you need to win voters, calling them garbage is not a good way to get them, frankly. Now, Kamala Harris is trying to walk it back. These are comments she made on Wednesday at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. Watch this.
Listen, I think that first of all, he clarified his comments, but let me be clear. I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for. You heard my speech last night and continuously throughout my career. I believe that the work that I do is about representing all the people, whether they support me or not. And as President of the United States, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you vote for me or not. That is my responsibility, and that's the kind of work that I've done my entire career, and I take it very seriously.
Now, why is this a big deal? Look, the statement, again, Biden said it, again, calling them garbage. Biden noted the statement did not come from Trump. There was someone spoke at his event. Kamala Harris trying to walk it back. Why is that? Well, this statement, it is being compared to a similar criticism of Trump voters, not just Trump, but his voters, back in 2016. You might remember, then Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, she referred to Trump voters as a, quote, basket of deplorables. And the statement ended up turning into a meme. It ended up galvanizing a lot of Trump supporters, where people, they made T-shirts and hats that said deplorable. People latched onto it. It appeared to have the opposite effect of what it was intended to do. People doubled down on it and said, oh, you think I'm a deplorable. Now they're saying, oh, you think I'm garbage. Oh, you think I'm a fascist? What is this? And so it's pushing voters away. Now we're seeing a similar reaction with the garbage comment. Some Trump supporters are showing the names they're being called, again, fascist, MAGA extremists, and so on. And they view it as basically, one party pushing them away. The problem is the Kamala Harris campaign probably needs to win some of them over. And so right before the election, this is something that could possibly swing some votes and or maybe galvanize votes, and possibly something could impact the outcome of it. It's working as like a second October surprise in favor of Trump. Now, personally, I think the issue is that the Kamala Harris campaign, again, they need to win some Trump voters over. They are trying to get male voters especially, because that's what they're lacking right now, and they're going for Trump for the most part. Now, she gave a recent speech suggesting that she would aim to represent all Americans and find common ground, and that was her narrative. Remember, they came out with the whole fascist narrative, and Trump's a fascist. It was kind of a rehashing of something we've been hearing since 2016. But then tried walking it back and said, I will represent all Americans. We're going to find common ground. She was trying to have a narrative of unity, and then the garbage statement came out. The timing of that statement ran in contrast to the message she was trying to present on the other side. Now, you might be wondering, well, how did Trump respond to this? What did Trump have to say? This is what Trump did. Let me show you. Watch this.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
So if you didn't get that, Trump actually did a campaign vehicle where he rode in a garbage truck to one of his campaign events and did a press conference from the garbage truck. He pulls like political judo oftentimes, where he takes things and just kind of moves the momentum of it. He does that often. Now look, in other news, folks, I mentioned yesterday there's been a recent string of incidents where at least one individual has been accused of setting fire to ballot drop boxes using incendiary devices. Now you might have seen a lot of media framed this as being the actions of Trump supporters. I said that there was not yet any evidence showing the political position of the suspect. A lot of media were jumping to conclusions based on just their assumptions, really. But now we have at least some evidence on the possible motive. Now, this is according to a New York Times article. Have a look. They say investigators responding to arson fires at 2 ballot boxes in the Pacific Northwest this week found devices at both scenes marked with the words "Free Gaza," according to 2 law enforcement officials. And unless Trump supporters are suddenly being about freeing Gaza, well, maybe this isn't Trump supporters doing it, frankly. They say investigators are trying to determine if the perpetrator was actually a pro-Palestinian activist or someone using that prominent cause to sow discord, one of the officials said. And they say, speaking on condition of anonymity because the investigation was ongoing. You know, it's the Free Gaza message appeared not only on the 2 devices which were discovered on Monday, but also in a device found at a third ballot box this month in Vancouver, according to the law enforcement officials. That device also had the words Free Palestine on it. Officials said at a news conference that they believe all three events were linked. Now look, a motive has not yet been determined. Maybe it's because the person believes in the Free Gaza thing. That seems like a motive to me. You often see the media do this, like, why would the killer do this? And the guy's like, Free Gaza, free, yelling out why he did it. And they're like, what could the possible motive be? And the guy's yelling it, no, I did it because of this. And the media is like, could this be something else? Look, it is possible that somebody is doing this and they're writing a message contrary to what they believe because they're trying to frame somebody else for it. If somebody believes maybe that people are casting illegal votes and they're trying to destroy votes and they believe this is the way to do it, but they want to frame the other party of doing it, it's not unthinkable that that might happen. But oftentimes when you have people carrying out incidents like this that are very unlikely going to be broad enough to actually impact the elections, some of these, there was reports like one of the boxes, like 3 votes were destroyed, and they can again, you can check your vote basically. It's not enough to swing the elections. It does appear these could be motivated more about people trying to protest the war between Israel and Gaza, and not, as a lot of the media have framed it, as people who believe quote-unquote conspiracies around the election, right? The media basically is trying to swing this in ways that are contrary to the evidence, and they're trying to make it appear that this is, one side doing it when there's no evidence showing that. The only evidence suggesting that it's what they say it is, that it's Trump supporters doing it, is their assumption. There's nothing beyond that. Which is unfortunately the way that a lot of news happens these days. Now look, in other news, Donald Trump has unveiled a new plan on fighting back against gangs and drug cartels, and he's saying he wants to seize their assets, and he wants to use that money to help victims of crimes being committed by illegal immigrants. Now, Trump announced this during a recent speech. Watch.
So today, I'm announcing that for the first time under my administration, we will be seizing the assets of the criminal gangs and drug cartels. And we will use those assets to create a compensation fund to provide restitution for the victims of migrant crime, and the government will help in the restoration. The government will help in the restitution.
Now, to be clear, programs like this, they have actually been shown to work in the past against criminal groups. Actually, interestingly, if you study history, something similar was what brought an end to the golden age of piracy, which, global maritime trade, 1650s to about 1730, you had what was called the golden age of piracy. Again, people settled in America, the early 1600s, maritime trade between the New World and the Old World opened up. You had major maritime powers. You had, of course, the British naval fleet. You had the Portuguese naval fleet. You had the Spanish naval fleet. They were huge. Now, what happened and during that time? Well, you had a lot of piracy. You had different pirate groups plundering, raiding ships, stealing goods, taking slaves, and so on. A lot of people who had served in different wars didn't have any money. They took to a life of piracy. That's what we often refer to as the quote-unquote golden age of piracy. Now, what worked with that? Well, a lot of different nations tried fighting the pirates. They had privateers. Some nations, because they were at war with each other, began hiring pirates to raid and plunder their opponents, a type of economic warfare. What happened? Well, eventually, when they finally decided, this is too big of a problem, there's too many pirates, too many gangs, right? These gangs robbing and enslaving and killing. One of the big solutions, one of the ones that actually solved the issue, was not fighting them, not trying to stop them, because again, that was causing nation-state kind of problems. What they did was started going after the profits, going after the money. And how did they do that? Well, if you're a pirate and you're robbing people and so on, what do you do with it? Well, what's the value of gold and goods and plunder if you can't use it? They went to the ports. the ports where the pirates frequented and sold the goods and, laundered their money and everything else. They made it so the ports had security, and they made it so the plunder was useless. It could not be spent. The money, the award of it was gone. Now look, what ended up happening from that was, piracy, just like the drug trade, was about money. People do it because they want to make money. Some people do it because they just feel they can't live another life. But, again, the ability to make a living doing that was why they did it. As soon as pirates were not able to make money through crime, and when that narrow profit margin became too dangerous to be worthwhile, it naturally came to an end. You go after the profits, you put an end to the illegal business. And so, when it comes to the drug cartels, we've discussed before, what are the home bases of them? Where does the money go? Well, a lot of the money laundering for them is done by Chinese mafia groups. Often with ties to the Chinese Communist Party, in fact. A lot of this works through what's been referred to as the Vancouver model, where they launder cartel drug money through casinos, mostly in Canada. They do it in some other places as well. And so there's known locations where the money is laundered. There's known locations where the money goes. And for the most part, a lot of these counter-drug operations don't go after the money. They go after the drugs, they go after the shipments, they go after that side of it. They don't go after the other side of it. You go after the other side, you remove the incentive. You make it so it's not profitable, you can't pay your operators, and they become mad. Now, that's what Trump is saying he is going to do. We can see if it works out. And then he's going to take the money that they seized from these cartels, and he's going to give it to the families of people who've been killed or harmed by illegal immigrants. Now look, in other news, the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times, they have decided not to endorse a candidate for the 2024 elections. And they've done this with great cost to themselves. The Washington Post in particular, they've been facing backlash in the company, outside of the company. They have like a mutiny taking place. People are quitting their jobs. The editors are very unhappy about it. It's causing a massive stir. Bezos at the top is standing by his position. It appears to have come from him. The newspaper, they have lost around 250,000 subscribers. That's about 10% of their subscriber base. And you lose that many, you're not looking like you're in a good situation. I'll be talking about the Washington Post owner, Jeff Bezos, and the impact of what he's deciding and why he's doing it, only on EpochTV.com. So if you're joining me on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble X, now is the time to click on the link in the description below or in the live chat and come and join us for the rest of this episode and also our live discussion. We talk about your questions. That'll be on EpochTV.com. So come on over, folks. Also, just a reminder, we will not be having a live show tomorrow, but we will be releasing the episode on what we're seeing on the ground in Georgia. Again, I just spent several days in Georgia. I was talking to voters. I'm going to show you what they say. I'm going to let them speak, what their actual beliefs are, and I'm going to show you the truest picture of the situation I can demonstrate of what is actually happening with voters in Georgia. That's going to be out at around 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Epoch TV tomorrow. I'll also be premiering our episode also with survivalist E.J. Snyder on Ganjing World tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for free. So if you're watching on YouTube or elsewhere and you just plain old don't want to come join us on Epoch TV, we're going to have the E.J. Snyder interview, the survivalist one, on Ganjing World for free. So you can watch that and also some of our other specials on Ganjing World. And Ganjing World is a new platform with a non-addictive algorithm that frees users from endless scrolling and addiction. It's one of those sites where you can leave your kid with it and you don't have to worry about it polluting and corrupting them. I think Ganjing World is fantastic. It's a great idea. I fully support it. And again, I'm trying to support it with my show as well. I'll put the link in the description below for you to join to watch that for free. All right, folks, that said, we're going to jump right now, so make sure you're clicking on that link, and I will see you on EpochTV.com.